I'm Shlok and you're watching Learn with Shlok. So today we are gonna learn about fractions. So first of all, learning about fractions, we first need to know what are fractions actually and why do we even use them. So to do that, let's look at this circle. So assume that this circle is a pizza and you ordered a pizza at home. So you want to divide this pizza into 4 parts. Why? Because you have a sister, there is mother and there's a father. So they all want this pizza. So you have to equally divide this pizza for all of us to be happy. So what if you said that mother you can take this part, sister you can take this part, father you can take this part, and all of this remaining part is mine? Will your sister be happy or will your father, mother be happy? No, right? Because you're getting much larger part than the others. They will not be happy. They will say that I want all the things to be equal. Yeah, they want it equal. Now equalizing things is fractions. So take this pizza for instance. What if you said to your mother that, let's say, you can have this part, my sister will have this part, father will have this, and you can have this. Now your sisters and all of the family will be happy. Why? Because we all have an equal thing, and that's when you use fractions. Now let's say out of these 4 pieces you want to show what you have. So out of this what you have, you just have 1. So I might color it like this, and so I will show it like 4 parts and I have 1 of them. So this is fractions in diagrams. So you can represent fractions in diagrams like this, like there are 4, you can draw 4 parts and color 1 of them, and you can say that it's 1 by 4, or I have, out of the 4 parts I have 1 part. So now that we know about fractions and what are fractions, why do we use them in numbers? Like many of you will know, like we write fractions like 1 by 4. Why do we do that? To make it harder? No, absolutely not. Math just makes things simpler, not harder. So think of it like this way. This is a plot of land that 100 workers took. So this plot of land is divided into 100 parts, and out of that 100 parts you have 1 part. How will you represent it? Will you keep on drawing hundreds of parts? Or say it was 1000 parts, so will you keep drawing thousands of parts? No, right? We don't have that much time. So in that case we use numbers. That's why we use numbers, to make it simpler, not harder. So let's say this plot of land had 100 parts and I had 1 of them. So I will represent it as 1 by 100. So what do this 1 by 100 means? This 100, which is the total parts. The down part means the total parts, how many parts are there, and the upper parts mean how much of that parts you have. Like there were 100 parts and I have 1 of them, so 1 by 100. And it makes simpler than drawing 100 parts. So that's why we use numbers. Now you saw me that I said this as the upward part and this as the downward part. But it's not called that. There are specific names given to this to make it even more simpler. So the upper part in a fraction is called, the downer part is called denominator. And the upper part is called the numerator. So the numerator is the part which you have, and denominator is the total plot of land, or the whole. So fractions in a sense are just parts of a whole. So now that we know about fractions, why we use fractions in numbers, why don't we give it a try? Let's see this circle, and this circle has 2 parts. So how will we write it? We'll write 2 at the bottom because that's the total number of parts. And let's say I have 1 of these parts. So this part I have. So how will I write? 1, because I just have 1 out of 2 parts. So let's see this circle now. This circle has 4 parts. So the total number of parts are 4. And out of that I say I have 2 parts this time. So I'll write 2 at the top, or in the numerator part. So now if I ask you, which of this fraction is larger than the other? Some of you might be 2, some of you might say 2 by 4, some of you might say 1 by 2, but actually they both are one and the same. How's that? These fractions are something that we call equivalent fractions. So it's equivalent fractions. And why they are equivalent fractions? That's common sense, because they are all equal in sense. So now if you're not getting why are they equal, let's see the diagrams part, not the numbers part, because it makes somewhat harder it. So let's see the diagrams part. Both the circle are the same, just that this circle is divided into 4 parts and this is into 2 parts. As you can see, in both the circles I have the same area that I need. So either it's 2 parts or either it's 1 part, they both are the same. Like this, there are many fractions like this. So if you want to see if they are equivalent fractions or not, you have to check it out as diagrams, or there's a formula to that, and we will see to that. So now that we saw what are equivalent fractions, and to see equivalent fractions we see diagrams, but we cannot always draw diagrams and part it and see if it's are equal or not. So we use numbers too in this case too. So let's say 4 by 8 is equivalent to 1 by 2 and 2 by 4. How do we see that? To make him equivalent to 1 by 2, or see it if it's equivalent to 1 by 2, you have to simplify him, and that's an application called simplifying fractions. So how do we simplify fractions? Let's see to that. So both the numerator, which is the upper part, and the denominator, which is the downer part, both have to be divided by the same number. So let's say 4 and 8. So we write here 4 and 8, and so they should be divided by some number that divides both the number. Let's say 2 for instance right now. So 2 divides 4 and 8 too. So 2, if we divide 4 by 2, we get 2 2s are 4, and if we divide 8 by 2, we get 4. So we should write it like this. So we have divided 4 by 8 by 2. Now let's say again I have to divide this. Now I have to see, I know that 4 by 8 is equivalent to 2 by 4, but I don't know that if 2 by 4 is equivalent to 1 by 2. How do I know that? You can again divide this till the point that you cannot divide this until you use a decimal or anything. So let's say you have to divide this number. Which number can this number be divided with? 2 and 4. Both the numbers should be divided by one number, and we can divide both by 2 again. So 2 1s are 2, 2 2s are 4, and we get 1 by 2. So in a sense, 4 by 8 and 1 by 2 are equivalent fractions, and what we did just now is called simplifying fraction, making them simple. So now that we know more about fractions, simplifying fractions, equivalent fractions, what are fractions, let's learn about types of fractions. Yeah, there are types of fractions. So the first fraction that we are going to learn are zero fractions. So you might say, what are zero fraction? I never even heard of that. Zero fraction just that the numerator is 0 and the down part can be anything, like 0 by 24 or 0 by 2. All of this are the same thing, because there were 2 parts and you have nothing on them. So what you have, how much parts you have? 0 parts. So all of this value is just 0. So they are called zero fractions. Let's write here zero fractions. Now next are the proper fraction that we have been learning now. Simplifying fractions and the equivalent fraction that we were doing now, we were doing with proper fractions. So the proper fractions are the fractions that lie between 0 to 1. So how many parts can you see in here? 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's say I started at this point and I reached this point. So how much out of the 4 parts, how much I have traveled? 1, right? So it will be 1 by 4. Let's say I traveled another 2. So now it's 3 by 4. And let's say now that I traveled again 1. So it's gonna be 4 by 4. And this is where the proper fraction ends and the new fraction starts, and that's called the whole fraction. So let's write it here, whole fraction and proper fractions. And proper fractions. So now, what are proper fractions and what are whole fractions? Whole, as I said, proper fractions are the part of a whole, and what a whole means, just 1. So they range between 0 to 1. But as we come to 1, like I have the whole part, there were 8 parts and I have all of them, then we call that whole fraction. Whole fraction and zero fraction aren't names that mathematicians give them, but it makes our life simpler, so why not use them? So after 1, if I go even further than 1, which if you think is like impossible, but there's a chance. What if I travel this much and this much? How much parts do I have now? I have 6. But how much were there? 4. How could that be? There are 4 parts and I have 6 of them. That look like impossible, but as you can see here, I traveled 6 parts, but there were just 4 parts. So this fraction, which doesn't look like a proper fraction, because in this fraction the numerator is larger than the denominator. If you see in proper fraction, the denominator is always larger than the numerator, but in improper fraction the numerator is always larger than the denominator. It's the opposite of proper fraction, so the name improper fraction. So this improper fraction range from 1 till infinity. No one's counting that. And so these fractions are called improper fraction. So improper fraction. So these are the types of fraction. There's one more type which is somewhat linked with improper fraction. You might say, what is it? So before going into that, let's see. So what if I travel more and more and more and more, and I reached a number 50, let's say 50 by 4. Now I've reached a long way from here. So now if I want to count where I was in improper fraction system, I have to count 1, 1, 1, 1 like this, and it will take a million times, even a year, I guess. So to make it simpler, we use another type of fraction, and it's called mixed fraction, or some people like to call it mixed numbers. So what are mixed fraction and mixed numbers? They're written something like this. They are a combination of a whole number and a fraction. So improper fraction actually equal to a mixed fraction. You can make an improper fraction a mixed fraction and a mixed fraction an improper fraction. So let's take this improper fraction for ourselves and let's make it into a mixed fraction. How do we do that? So to do that, you have to divide 50 by 4, or the numerator by the denominator, in the old way. So we'll write 50 here and 4 here. So if we do the division, 4 ones are 4, minus 4, there remains 1, 2s are 8, minus 8. By dividing it, you will get 12 as the quotient, 2 as the remainder, and 4 as the divisor. So what you do, that the whole number part, you write it as 12. The remainder you write in the numerator part, 2, and the denominator you write as 4, the divisor. So this will be equivalent to 50 by 4, or 50 by 4 will be equivalent to this. Now I can find my way easier, that I was till the 12th part, and after the 12th part I carried 2 parts out of the 4. So this way mixed fractions make improper fractions easily. So in this section we have learned many things about fractions. What are fractions, simplifying fractions, whole fraction, types of fractions. So in the next video we will learn about how to add fractions, subtract, multiply and divide them. So till then, bye bye.